I'm just gonna. Thank you, Erin. I thought I got the auto voice there, so we know that the computer lady is paying attention. And we'll just get this presented as well so that we can move forward. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Had to move you out of the way. All right, so my name is Ashleigh Weeden. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph, and actually they're familiar faces because my MPA is from the University of Victoria, so there's a few faces in the crowd that I recognize from too long ago now that I completed my MPA out west. And I'm delighted to be joined this morning as well by my PhD supervisor, Ryan Gibson, who is the Libro Professor in Regional Economic Development, also within the School of Environmental Design and Rural Development at the University of Guelph. And you can see all of our contact information there and where to find out more about us and the project specifically, as well as our social media handles. So should anything be interesting or outrageous to you, please feel free to send it out there into the universe. This morning, we're talking about a project that we completed last fall in Saugeen Shores, Ontario, which is in now currently in the process of potentially being renamed to the Saugeen Peninsula in respect of the Chippewas of Saugeen and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who are the treaty nation and traditional territory stewards there on that part of the world, but others might recognize that as the Bruce Peninsula, where Bruce Peninsula National Park is not too far away, and Bruce Power is located also within this region. And so we want to talk about all of the complicated labor market dynamics that are happening in this region and why this is actually a problem for public administration and not necessarily only employers. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about the genesis of the project and why we went through a MyText process to explore this and all the people involved in sort of getting us set up for success on this initiative.
Great, thanks, Ashleigh. And it is exciting to share some of the findings from this innovative research initiative that's taken place over the past year. Across the country, it's not unique just to the Saugeen Shores region, but rural and small towns are changing and they're influenced by multiple factors, whether it be changing economies or changing demographics. The outcome is that some of these communities are growing while others are maybe declining. And public policy and rural public administration is increasingly important to support the approximately 20% of Canadian residents that live in small communities. Public policy for these rural places needs to ensure that their demographics, their economies, their social dynamics are not just simply overlooked. And our collective experience over the last number of decades is that we've learned quite well that applying urban-based policies in rural areas hasn't really proven effective. And so this was an opportunity to really dive into the dynamics that are taking place in the Saugeen Shores from multiple perspectives to better understand what's happening, but also to think about what sort of change can take place. And local actors have recognized that the actions required to support their community and the future of their community don't lie under the sole purview of any one actor. So we've got governments, local governments, businesses, social services, voluntary organizations are all needed to work together to both identify and to implement their collective priorities for the long-term prosperity in the region. With this in mind, this particular project was supported through a MyTax Accelerate internship with Bruce Power and the town of Saugeen Shores. And if you're not familiar with the MyTax Accelerate program, I would highly encourage you to look at it and to investigate. But it provides an opportunity to build those partnerships between communities, organizations, businesses, and the universities and colleges. So this innovative partnership allowed for us to co-construct this initiative, its activities, the data collection, the analysis, and the knowledge sharing. And you can see on the slide that this initiative was guided by a really diverse, dynamic team of folks, including the town of Saugeen Shores, representatives from Bruce Power, the Regional Labor Market Planning Board, the Chamber of Commerce, and scholars from across the country. So it was a really exciting opportunity to embrace that idea that local policy and regional policy needs to have this multi-stakeholder approach to it to dive into this particular theme here around labor market dynamics. But maybe I'll pass it to yourself, Ashleigh, to continue the discussion around what actually took place.
Thanks, Ryan. And we do have to also acknowledge that this was actually driven by the town. They reached out to us through a series of conversations, and the project itself evolved over about 2 years into the Accelerate internship, and through leveraging a partner who effectively delegated the everyday supervision to the town of Saugeen Shores, but was funded via the private sector via Bruce Power. And so it was a really interesting relationship in terms of we didn't come to them with a question, they came to us, and we were able to fulfill it, which created, as you can imagine, all kinds of interesting questions at the council table around why they were paying for a consultant to do this work and couldn't staff do it, to which they respond, we're getting it for free, isn't this wonderful? So this was an interesting process in negotiating these kinds of truly community engaged research principles. So with a community, as Ryan said, that's experiencing growing pains, it's important to note that Saugeen Shores is an amalgamation of 3 communities, which I'll show you in a couple of slides around just geography there, but they are the fastest growing municipality in their region. They've been consistently recognized over the last 5 to 8 years as one of the best places to live in Canada, consistently beating out larger urban centers and a lot of their compatriots or competitors in terms of smaller communities. However, what that means is they're starting to experience a lot of the challenges that we might typically associate with urban environments in a smaller setting that doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure or other service setups to deal with those challenges. So there isn't necessarily a transportation network. There isn't a lot of effort around affordable and attainable housing yet, although they've undertaken a lot of those initiatives in recent times. And they have increasingly a K-shaped kind of economy. And this is between the rapidly expanding and growing Bruce nuclear energy system, and then an economy that was previously based mostly in agriculture and then increasingly in tourism. So you have a lot of retail and hospitality, employers and businesses contrasting against a very high-paying technical and technological center in Bruce Power and all of the spin-off businesses associated with that. So in this map, you can kind of see exactly where Saugeen Shores is located. It's the amalgamation of 3 previous municipalities, Southampton, Port Elgin, and Saugeen Township. And those identities are still very much present and strong. I have a place just on Saugeen First Nation as well, and have for the last sort of 40 years. And no one who lives or is of this place would ever call it Saugeen Shores, except those that work for the municipality. Everyone else refers to it as Southampton or Port Elgin or Saugeen Township. This creates all kinds of interesting questions around the role of the various employers that are associated with those individual communities and their own, in effect, 3 main streets in terms of where those employers are existing. And it's important to note also that Bruce Power isn't actually located within Saugeen Shores, but Saugeen Shores is the home of the largest percentage of people that work at Bruce Power. So you have these interesting relationships between where people live, where they're employed, how this growth is affecting a lack of clarity for local government actors and institutions in terms of what to do about all of the good and then all of the challenges that come with that, while fostering an inclusive and cohesive approach to how we look at labor market dynamics. So this is maybe not your typical labor market study. We weren't looking specifically at quantitative data. It took a qualitative data on purpose. And this was because when we look at rural and small town communities, as Ryan said, they have unique and place-based challenges and opportunities that may not be captured in those quantitative StatsCan data sets when it comes to looking at labor market dynamics. And so we want to get into the idea of how we talk to and explore conversations with local actors. What we did was we talked to 23 individuals balanced across all of the sectors in Saugeen Shores. We talked to 10 employers and entrepreneurs, 7 individuals currently employed, or 6 looking for work in the area. We looked at everyone who came across the various communities involved in this amalgamated community. And then we also talked to people that were maybe not necessarily in Saugeen Shores, but were looking to get into the labor market in the community, or who had been out and looking to come back. We also made sure that the people we talked to were across the broad sectors mostly represented in the areas, specifically nuclear energy and utilities, retail, public administration, agriculture, construction, small business owners, hospitality, all the way across the board. We did not focus on youth, and this is actually an opportunity for future research because we wanted to make sure we were speaking to adults, and for our ethics process, people had to be over 18 and be comfortable completing an interview in English. But interviewees were not asked their age other than if they were over 18, but we were able to actually capture the full spectrum of labor market participation above youth. So young professionals, those in a mid-career looking to switch, people that were in their second or third careers, and family business owners, as well as individuals that were close to retirement. And what we heard from people was that, it's difficult for employers to recruit and retain staff in an environment where the next closest competitor was able to offer sometimes 2 times, 3 times the hourly wage that a local restaurant could offer. Or if you're a tradesperson, and I know from having a property up there as well, that if you're looking for someone to come in and do your own housing electrical work, it's difficult to find those people because they have a steady job somewhere else in their trade employment and are able to navigate and access a different work there than being able to be an individual contractor on that more household level. There's also a lack of social and community amenities that appeal to a broad range of potential staff that might come into the area, and challenges in supporting young people in accessing those paths. And so there was a real expressed need for a coordinated amount of support from the municipality, as well as major employers and the chamber and other institutions, to think about what this would mean. Those looking for work and employees were really focused on the unaffordability of living in the area when we're looking at even empty lots in the community going for upwards of $800,000. And the difficulty in terms of, if you work at Bruce Power, you might be able to afford that. But if you work in the local restaurant, or you are working in retail or have a seasonal job, that becomes very quickly out of reach. The lack of transparency about how to access those opportunities became challenging for people. There's a real sense of, it's not whether or not you can access these things openly, but that networking and who you know becomes really important in a small and rural community. And connecting new entrants to all those opportunities becomes difficult because of that. And so employees and people looking for jobs were really looking for a one-window solution of, how do I find out where to get employed, what this looks like, and what my opportunities might be in terms of accessing meaningful and inclusive employment. And we did ask, what constitutes a good job? And by and large, wage was part of it, but also the need for benefits, the need for flexibility, something that responded to their life and that they felt that they could invest in the long term. So what makes this a public administration project? And this was something that I found interesting, was this was driven primarily by the local government staff. They really positioned themselves as the key drivers in orchestrating the economic system and social and economic development in their community. They have sort of the secret sauce of a magic collection of really committed staff and council that took this issue seriously and actually came to us with these questions. And so in doing that, there needs to be a little less of the veneer around everything is good when it comes to a high growth sector like nuclear energy, and really address some of those trade-offs and the compromises that come with it. So how do local and municipal and regional governments consider diversification strategies that take care of the potential vulnerability of a single industry town when it comes to a company town like Bruce Power? Related to this is a lot of the comments from our interviews were saying that local government needs to be the leader in investing in infrastructure and physical infrastructure as social infrastructure as well in the community, but that they should be partnering with local businesses and organizations to make sure that the benefits of growth are being reinvested into things that put equity at the core consideration of what's happening there. Finally, this notion around a Saugeen Shores model of economic development presented itself as something important to the community, so that it was responsive to local needs, able to adapt to those 3 pre-amalgamation communities, as well as something that looked at the economic functioning of Saugeen Shores as a whole. And people really saw the municipal government as leaders in driving this forward. Not the only people responsible for it, but the folks that should be really taking the key initiatives. So what does this mean for looking at public administration practice and policy? Is that place really does matter. We can't sort of superimpose policies from urban environments, as Ryan said, and this is sort of undoing the legacy of new public management, that if you're a good public administrator in one municipality, you'll be a good public administrator in another. We're finding out that that's definitely not the case when it comes to rural and small town communities. Government isn't the only one steering the ship, and a healthy labor market dynamics are more than just about jobs. They're about all of the parts that we manage or seek to intervene in when it comes to our socioeconomic policies. And finally, leadership and capacity to pursue these initiatives is important. The fact that we did this initiative, the local municipality leaders in terms of staff and council, as well as our partners that were involved in the advisory council, took these, and they're already in play in terms of how to implement some of the recommendations that came about as a result of this report. So the nature of community engaged scholarship and connecting evidence, scholarship, and community leadership becomes critical to navigating the way forward. And I love this quote, municipal power, as you said, Zach, the most important order of government is the key to translating progressive policies into action. So if you have all of this growth and benefits, it needs to be applied. that's all we have to share with you at this point, and respecting the time that we have left for the other presentation and conversation. But if you'd like to learn more about what we were doing with the Getting to Work project, you can find it at ruraldev.ca, or please reach out via our contact information there. Thank you so much.